Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of True Story Live. Well, tonight's topic, we don't quite know what we're talking about, which I'm sure looks bad. It seems like we should be better prepared. It just is kind of the way things happened. And also, we don't have Jen with us tonight. She's gonna take the evening off, but I'm sure she'll be back next week. Of course, we'll miss her, but we'll try to move forward. So tonight's topic is to be decided, as I put in the description, and you guys can help with that too. If you want to weigh in on what's on your mind, you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, please put them in the chat. We'll talk about whatever. We're trying to. Well, let me speak for myself. I'm trying to keep things a little bit light. It's been a busy week for some of us, and we're not trying to dive into anything too heavy. So if you have kind of a lighter topic or something fun, but if you have something you really want us to discuss, whether it's light or heavy or whatever, if it's weighing on you, please put it up and we'll be more than happy to discuss it. How about that? All right. Before we get going, I'm going to introduce the panel for those listening for the first time. My name is Jason. I'm the host of the broadcast, and I'm happy to be here with usually three people. My wife, Jen, is not going to be here tonight. So if you're listening for the first time, you can meet her next week. But with me tonight, I have our friend Glenn from Australia. Glenn, take a minute to say hello to the peoples, please.
Yeah, howdy. I just thought for all of the people here, one, two, just all the pro-vaccination camp. I've just had my sixth COVID injection this morning. So I'm sure you're all excited for me.
Sure, sure.
So, yeah, other than that, I'm happy to talk about anything you like.
All right.
Nothing's off limits.
Nothing's off limits, even vaccines. Well, vaccines are off limits. We can't rightly talk about vaccines on YouTube. So
Okay.
that's right. No, you didn't know this?
No, what? Well, how would I?
Oh, well, I mean, you're part of YouTube, so I thought
I
heard
had
about.
no idea. I just said I had a vaccine. That's it. I wasn't making comment on the pros and cons.
No, I know, and that's probably okay. Yeah, it gets people strikes for mentioning. So generally, people have thought of clever ways to say it, like the jab, the syrup, the juice. There's all these other names people use for it, especially if they're going to be derogatory about it. But just in general, people have to be very careful, even discussing it, especially when you're trying to advise people. Like there have been doctors, real doctors, not people in someone's basement claiming to be a doctor, real doctors who have been against taking the syrup. And they have been summarily canceled and removed and blocked on YouTube under the guise of fake news or there's another word for it. What's the other word for it? Misinformation and things like that. So it's not free speech on YouTube.
Right. So does it cost you guys money to get syrup or whatever? Or do you get it for free?
I wouldn't have any idea. I wouldn't get it myself under any circumstances because it hasn't been tested, and people argue that point. But it for me, I mean, I grew up in a chiropractic family, and chiropractics are generally, they're not against medical stuff in general, but I kind of grew up. I got the infant shots, the booster and all the vaccines that a child gets, because my mom wasn't on the board yet with the no vaccines. And then I think when I was 5 or 6 was the last vaccine I got, the childhood stuff that they give to. I mean, there's all I forget how much it is, but there's a number of vaccines that they try to give to infants. Um, so I just have never. I mean, I got one that I had to get to go to university, because they have exchange students, and so anyone that comes in because of that has to have a kind of a general vax, tuberculosis, and that stuff. So I got one of those, and so that was back in 2004. I haven't had one since.
So, is there any connection between Christian beliefs and pros and or the decisions that get made whether to take these things or not? Are we talking two unrelated things here, or is there a connection?
Well, it can be related in some ways. There are certain fringe groups within Christianity that won't that would say they don't trust science at all in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it doesn't speak for everyone. I think for the most part, there's a marriage between Christianity and science. It's like accepting that there are good things within science that are for our good. When it comes to global warming and things like that, that's kind of where it parts ways in some arenas. You have to be careful talking about that too. Gosh, we're just starting out not talking about anything heavy, and here we got vaccines and global warming. That's how things happen. So there's not, in my mind. I mean, Marisa, I'll introduce Marisa, and if she has a different thought on it, I would like to hear from her on that. But I think it can be tied in, but not always, if that makes any sense. Like my reasons are not because of Christianity. I'm on the side that the good parts of science, the science that uses actual experimentation and testing for the benefit of man, actual research um, is beneficial to humankind. There are plenty of vaccines, and like the polio vaccine, I've looked into that quite a bit, and it really seemed to help. Now there are fringe people that say that, well, it just looks like it helped. It was dying out by the time that the guy came up with the polio vaccine, so it just looked like it helped. It was
That's
just
rubbish. That's
right, right,
rubbish. That's what I grew up with, and kids around our neighbourhood were dying from it.
right,
Not just being necessarily left paralyzed; they were literally dying from it. When I
right.
was, and the families, and I know this from when I was really young, the parents were petrified, literally
Yeah,
petrified about their kids getting it.
yeah.
So as to it dying out, that's rubbish.
Right, right, right. I don't disagree. Um, so there are. I only brought that up to say that I believe personally that there are some vaccines or some things that medicine creates that is for our good. But on the other hand, there's a lot to be said about when oh, what's his name? Of course, I can't remember. Rockefeller. Rockefeller took over the schools and the textbooks and all the things that he had his hands in. He demonized natural sciences, natural remedies, and things like that. This isn't conspiracy. This is all stuff that people can look up on their own, how this happened. Um, I'm not for that. I'm not for demonizing natural remedies and just saying, well, these are all quacks if they're not given our stamp of approval under quote unquote medical science. And they set up the regime of hospitals and doctors and things like that, and demonized everyone else. Natural remedies. I'm not for that. So, like anything else, I think it can go too far. Um, Also with us tonight is Marisa, our friend from the Nez Lover channel. If you haven't had a chance to go over and watch her content, please do yourself a favor. She does artwork along with singing, and the people that join her over there are really wonderful people. So, Marisa, do you want to take a minute to say hello to the peoples, please?
Hello to the peoples. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'll say hi to Annette and Christ is the Truth and John Dons. Thank you, everybody, for coming by. And throughout the course of the evening, I might be sharing some links. My friends that come in are okay with it, but if you're new or you want your link shared, please let me know in the chat and we will share it. If you do not want your link shared, please let us know in the chat and we'll respect your wishes.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we don't have Jen with us tonight, I'm still looking forward to getting hip deep into another great conversation. I believe we were talking about, oh, let's see, my friend Super Dave calls it the jabby do. Well, I say no to the jabby do. Does it have a correlation with my faith? Yes and no. Yes, because I believe there are things in it put there that nobody needs for any reason.
Agreed.
And I do believe that proper scientific testing was not done
Right.
before they rolled it out. You don't have to be a, you know, a Rhodes Scholar to figure that one out.
Or a
So I'm
conspiracy
saying,
nut.
or anything that
Right.
just makes sense.
Right.
And the polio vaccine was tested for way longer, by the by.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
True.
I'm not anti-vaccine per se. I'm just anti certain ones that
Yeah.
raise my brows in suspicion. And on every level, the
Right.
one that we're talking about, I'm saying no. No, thank you.
Right. So you're not generally an anti-vax because there are people that are
No,
just right.
and I've been called everything from conspiracy nut to,
Right.
anti-vax, and I want to kill everybody because I don't want to conform, and you name it, it's been thrown out there.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, my free will, what I know,
Mm-hmm.
what I understand about what the process of testing
Right.
is and should be, was not met
Right.
in this particular situation.
Right.
So that's enough of a reason right there for me to say no. No,
Right.
thank you. There are also other reasons that make me say no. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So to answer you, Glenn, it's both.
Okay.
There you go.
I think that's fair enough. I would agree with you. I'm not an anti-vaxxer either. Um, I'm definitely against some of the vaccines they give to small infants before they're even large enough to be able to take what's being put in their body. Some of which I believe are poisons. I mean, a lot of people are just amazed when they read the cards of the ingredients in some of these things of what's in them. I mean, they have to disclose it apparently, right? So they have to say what's in it. They just make it really tiny so you can't read it. This should all, in my opinion, this would be so much easier if it was all just out in the open. If they didn't demonize people that are asking questions. Like I remember when the vaccines first rolled out, or the what is your friend called? That's the even better one. Jabby what?
The jabby do.
Jabby do. Okay, I like that one. When the Jabby doos first came out, and people were saying, whoa, wait a minute, this wasn't tested for 10 years. You know what's going on here? And I understand that they had a quote unquote pandemic on their hands, whether it was real or not. I'm not arguing that. But any vaccine that is introduced to the public should be under the same scrutiny, in my opinion, as all the other vaccines that have come before. And I think it's 10 years. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. 10 years of research before they do human trials. And that's it for me. That's literally what I based my decision on. Is that there was not sufficient evidence that it had been tested, and I'm honestly I'm not quick to get a shot for everything. I'm just not. It's not being anti-vax. It's my personal preference, and it doesn't have anything to do with my personal spiritual beliefs or anything. I'm reluctant. I don't like shots. So that's the bottom line. Now, Glenn and I had an interesting conversation through chat a couple of years back when all this stuff was coming out, and he was sharing that it's for the common good. You care about the people around you. You don't want to make anyone sick, and that's a fair point. But people get sick who take the vaccine as well. They shed, and this isn't something I'm
Thank
making up.
you.
This is something they have admitted, that whether you get the vaccine or not, there's a period of time after you get the vaccine that you're shedding. Someone can still get sick from, and they admitted this. Now, they didn't admit it right away, but over the past year or so, they've admitted that you can still have the vaccine and still get sick and make other people sick. It's not 100%. I think they would say that it does protect you more than someone doesn't have it, right? But I believe our bodies are made to fight off diseases, and if you go and get a vaccine every time your body's trying to fight something, then you're denying your body's natural immunity to fight off infection. And this is true about antibiotics. So they're warning people about taking too much antibiotics because your body will get used to that antibiotic. It becomes resistant, right? The diseases or the viruses become resistant to the antibiotic. So what do you do then? Like, the only thing I've taken antibiotics for is teeth pain. When I have an infection in my tooth or whatever. It's the worst kind of pain you can imagine. Glenn's experienced some of that. I don't know how other people cope with it. Me, I can't. I just can't do it. So when I start to feel tooth pain, I'm going to go to a dentist and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get the antibiotic to knock out the infection. Of course, that's another topic for another night of how much hoops you have to jump through. You're paying for x-rays, you're paying for the dentist visit itself, then you're paying for the actual antibiotics, which is usually pretty cheap if you have insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't just walk in any dentist and say, hey, I got a tooth infection, I need antibiotics, and they give it to you. I wish it were like that. It should be like that in my opinion, but it's not. So I'm not against medication. There are certain medications out there, as I said at the top of the broadcast, that I believe are for people's good. But when there's not the proper research, now I didn't set these guidelines, they set them. In fact, there are children with diseases, when someone does come up with a cure for it, that they haven't been tested. The FDA has not approved of certain, like, does anyone remember seeing Lorenzo's Oil, the movie?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, so that was based on a true story of a guy that had some kind of child that had a rare disease, and there was a doctor who came up with Lorenzo's Oil, which they found was helping people with this disease, and he lost a child to that very disease, and that's why he came up with this cure. But it wasn't FDA approved. So there was this huge, in the movie and in the true story, there's this huge battle between the FDA and this family that's trying to get them to give them permission to have their son get this oil, right? So that's what it's about. So on one hand, you have people that should have access to things that work, but it's not tested. So they block that. And then you have, in this case, where there's a high demand for the jab, and it's being pushed. Advertisements, free things given to take it. I mean, I've never seen anything pushed as much as this, except for flu shots. Flu shots are the same. Free flu shots, come into CVS, come into Walgreens, get a free flu shot. Even at my job, there's a sign right in the lobby when you go in, get your free flu shot, right? So there is a lot of pushing of this, and they're not charging for it. And we know we live in a society where if someone can make money off of any little thing, they do. For instance, the big controversy going on with Amazon. We have Amazon Prime. We watch videos. We don't own cable. It's too high. So we pay a subscription for Amazon. And the subscription that we had was ad-free. And I think we pay $18 a month to have all the movies and TV shows that they offer and no ads, right? Well, now they've decided that, well, that's no longer ad-free. In order to really get ad-free, you have to pay $2 more on your subscription. And people are really upset about this. I only bring that up because it just shows how much a company like Amazon, Bezos, who's worth billions of dollars, he wants to get that $2 from each person so that they don't have to watch ads. It's just ridiculous. So they get you coming or going. And certainly with the vaccine, with the jab, they got you coming or going. If you don't take it and you stand on principle that, hey, this wasn't tested, then you're demonized. And it is said, now Glenn didn't say this to me. I want to be clear about this. Glenn did not say this to me, but I have heard it from other people that because I'm not taking the vax, I'm endangering people and I don't care about the elderly or the sick. And that's just not true. I can care about other people, but not want to put something in my body that's not tested and get sick. And then there's the whole thing that we can't talk about of how many people are dying from the vaccines. Not a conspiracy. There are. It should be a well-known fact, but they suppress that too. And we've talked about that a little bit. But normally healthy people who have taken the vaccine are dropping dead. And Jen talked about this briefly, a website that keeps getting taken down and putting back up and taken down and putting back up. Died Suddenly is the name of that. You can find it out there if you type it in.
Yes, that's available on Rumble, last I knew.
Rumble. Yeah. So it's not available on YouTube. YouTube is very, very, what's the word, Marisa? What's the kind word? Censored.
Oh,
Censored.
yes, definitely censored. Yes.
So Rumble is more of an open forum like YouTube used to be when it first came out. I mean, I understand. I'm all for keeping misinformation away from people when possible. I'm all for not letting hate speech run supreme. But, you have that nasty little thing in the Constitution about free speech. And then, there's no argument on YouTube about what's constituted free speech. They just make the decision. They just decide, hey, we're going to scrub this. If it's talking about this jab, we're just going to scrub it. We'll just get rid of it. If there's a doctor who is against it and they have evidence, real evidence that they're presenting, and they're talking to people about it, we're just going to remove them from the platform. So Rumble is way more open, where people are more free to be able to talk about alternative medicine, alternative views, and things like that. Anyway, Annette says, I don't trust the government or the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, why would you? I mean, pharmaceutical companies are in it for profit. I mean, I don't think that anyone disagrees with that. I mean, they can say all they want that they're out there to help people, but I'm sorry, but when this quote unquote pandemic happened, they had a vaccine ready, that wasn't tested. It's for profit. If they can't make money on it, they're not going to offer it. I mean, this gets so my dad has diabetes, for instance, and he has insurance, so it brings the price down. But he was sharing with me that his insulin that he needs to live, if he didn't have insurance, it would be like $240 a vial. And, there are plenty of elderly people out there that are on a limited or a fixed income, but they have to have certain medications to survive, and they got Medicare, which is limited. So, sometimes they have to make a decision between whether they're going to buy food or buy their medication, and that's not right. Well, that's because of greed, in my opinion. It's the greed of the pharmaceutical companies that, I mean, how much money is enough? I don't know. Anyway, does anyone else want to weigh in on that at all? Anything I've said? Or we can talk about something else. What do you guys want to talk about in the chat? Do you guys have any topics that are interesting to you right now? Talk about
Since
the
I was just going to say, since Celine here, has anyone in the chat had any experience with online dating?
yeah, I have.
No, and the chat. I was
Oh,
because we know we have.
yeah. Do you guys see my profile pic?
Yeah, I checked Celine's pic. It's still her.
Yeah, it's small in here in the chat, but I can see it. There is
No,
a
I went on Facebook.
oh
I saw the. It's Crisis of Truth. Haven't. Okay. Oh, Crisis of Truth. Do you think it? I thought you said you were contemplating it. I just wonder why people do try it and why people don't.
people try what?
Online dating, because I think
Oh
Crisis of Truth said he was thinking about it and maybe
oh okay.
one of
Well,
the
I think
sites. And only because Celine's here, because she's obviously in the dating game at some point.
yeah. I think there are some advantages to it. I think you have to be careful, like anything else. But I met Jen not in a dating. It wasn't a dating situation, but it was an online situation, a Facebook group, and we became friends. And but I did eHarmony. My first marriage was a result of being part of eHarmony, and before the marriage, I had a couple women that I met on there and went down the road a little bit, with the, I thought that eHarmony was pretty good for that because it made you really answer questions. Some of the dating sites don't do that. Some of you just put up a profile and let the games begin. Um, eHarmony is at least a little bit more structured. Of course, you pay for it. It's a premium. I think it's one of the most expensive dating services that's out there. Um, but I personally know several people that met on eHarmony and are still married. So it works for some people. Christian Mingle, uh, they're less expensive, in my opinion. I did that for a while. After I met Jen and we were just friends, and Glenn was encouraging me to be open to love again. And I took it to heart. So I signed up with Christian Mingle, and I scoured the profiles. I mean, I was very much looking for a particular thing, and I didn't find it on Christian Mingle. But that doesn't mean that if you're looking for something like that you won't find it. I have probably very different parameters than I was searching for. Um, I just was really blessed to have things work out the way they did. But I don't have anything against the dating services or anything. I know some of them are just meat markets. They're a way to meet people for sex and stuff like that. But I think Christian Mingle and eHarmony are legitimate dating services. So, Marisa, have you have tried any dating services, or you have no interest in that, or?
Um, those things never went well for me. I don't do that stuff anymore. It's been
Right,
years and years and years and years.
right.
No,
Oh, so
thank you.
you have done it in the past.
Yeah, no, it was horrible. So, no, thank you.
Wow. I can add stories. I did this after my first marriage ended. The first person I met was Cribbs's mum, and then I met quite a few other people I had relationships with until it came to Sandra. I'm the biggest advocate for it. 100%, man. It's fantastic.
Right.
But I think there's a real trick to this. is that you've got to know what you're about and why you're there. Because if you start to get into the meat market competition, forget it. Like, I went there for genuine reasons. I wanted to meet someone as a partner, not as a flank.
Right.
So that immediately cuts down what what you're saying about the field. I mean, it cuts them right down, because you're not there just for a one nighter, or just something to fill in time if you're bored on the weekend. I mean, so no, I found that how you profile yourself is critical.
Yeah. Well, back up a little bit. So sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Finish,
go on, no,
please.
I'm just saying I think that's critical. And I think when you read the profiles about other people, what you do, you read them for what they don't say rather than what they do.
I would agree. Now, when you met my mother, it wasn't a dating site, though, was it?
Yeah, it was a very rudimentary connection site where I don't know whether it was a dating site per se, but it was like, I'm just trying to think of it, where you could connect with people. I think it could have been used as that, but you've got to remember, in those days there's no photos, it's all on the old modems. It was extremely rudimentary. Nothing like now. Nothing like now, of course.
Was it America Online? Because that's what my parents
We
used
were
to use.
using America Online, yes. That was to communicate, but I don't think... Well, actually... See, you could actually get a list of people. I just did it. I don't even know why. Because I had Michael, a young child I'm looking after. It doesn't mean you can't go out. You're not, like, as Ned would know, you're not available to just race out and leave the house and go have fun somewhere. You've got the responsibility of a child, so you can do stuff you can from your home, and of course that's a real plus. So we did use America Online. As I said, it was just like people would look at you imagine what something is 25 or more years ago. You can imagine what it was like. It wasn't very good, but you make it work. You send faxes. You sometimes get on the phone when they have cheap deals.
Yeah.
Just a whole other way of communicating. You can email was there at that point.
Uh-huh.
It was sort of started. You work around it. Nowadays everything is instantaneous.
Right. So my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is you guys met, and I feel like it was America Online. Like when I used it, it had various chat rooms, and they weren't necessarily for dating. You could use it for dating. Obviously, you guys met and dated as a result of it, but it's not set up as a dating site necessarily back then.
No, it wasn't. It was just a communication platform, but I don't think we could even do chat in those days. I think it was so rudimentary, and the internet used to drop out. You know what I mean? You have to pay for phone calls to hook on.
Oh yeah,
it's just costing a fortune if it go for 5 minutes and then drop out.
Oh yeah,
it's very unstable. So I think we gave up until later on. Gave up the chat and stuck to the emails, and then you just would sit there and wait for someone. You'd send an email, then you'd wait for a response to come back, and you'd send an email back.
Yeah,
so you could very time consuming.
Well, sure. Do you feel like there's something missing in how fast things are? Like I used to think about when people would wait for a letter, there was an anticipation around that, because it wasn't so instantaneous. Now, do you think people take it for granted how quickly you can send a message out? It's not as important, maybe.
I just think that's the sign of the times. That's how it works now.
Yeah.
I got no problem with it at all. I think it's good. I think what is important is your motivations for being there, and whether you're being authentic. It's the same deal across the board.
Sure.
Your integrity, your authenticity, all of those things. If you get on there for dating, count for everything, because if you're not telling the truth, I mean, what are you're hurting yourself, and you're hurting the other person.
Yeah.
And the one thing I think people tend to make a mistake is they'll hang on to something because there's no better offer, rather than say, no, look, it's not for me, it's not going to work, thank you, you're a nice person, but I'm going to move on.
Right.
You don't use people, and I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
People become that self-centered, and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think that was as prevalent back then. I think the fact that you had to invest so much of your time and make such an effort, you weren't going to be doing it if you weren't serious about it. You just couldn't keep it up. You'd be exhausted. Well, you probably were exhausted.
Sure.
So,
I think some of the younger people don't even know what we're talking about. America. I mean, America Online still exists. My dad still uses it for email. His email address is still AOL, so it exists still. But back then, it was pretty much the only option at the beginning, and it was, you had to connect through your phone. I'll never forget the sound it made when you were connecting, and you get bumped all the time. If you got a phone call, it would bump you. You'd try to set it up so it didn't bump you, but it would still bump you sometimes. And then sometimes, you had to dial in on a phone number, and if the phone number was busy, if there was too many people on that number, you'd have to wait till someone dropped off so you could connect. So it's nothing like that now. I mean, you can connect anytime you want, and it's not over the phone line. Obviously, it's way more streamlined. But yeah, I met people on America Online that I spoke to. I spoke to one girl who lived out in Las Vegas area, Henderson, Nevada, and she was a little kooky, but she was entertaining. I talked to her for, I don't know, maybe half a year, something like that. And then another one off America Online back in the 90s that lived in Michigan. Nothing ever materialized from that. But yeah, various people that I've met online and went down the road a little bit. So I don't have anything against it. Annette says, my daughter has done it, mostly not good. She dated one good guy for a while. Her current boyfriend she met at an anime convention a few years ago. They didn't start dating until about 6 months ago. Yeah, I'm sure there are good and bad stories. Celine has the one from Craigslist, and I'm not sure people should be using Craigslist, or if you use Craigslist, it should be very sparingly, and you have to be very careful because obviously it's something that has been abused. You have the Craigslist killings, and I mean, I have used it a couple times, and you meet in a public place. You don't go to anyone's house. That's just a personal rule. So I think you can use it. You just have to be careful of what situations you put yourself into. And I certainly wouldn't use it for dating, but anything's a risk. I think any dating situation, you meet someone online, you could be catfished. I mean, that's another thing. They put a profile picture up there, and they do a profile, and it's not who they really are. So, you might not get murdered, but you're meeting someone in person and they don't look anything like their profile pic. In fact, they might even be not the same sex that they said they were. I mean, there used to be a TV show that covered catfish. That's what it was. It was episode after episode of these stories of people pretending to be someone they're not, and they're confronting the people. So the whole beginning of the show was their relationship and their back and forth and a little bit of the chats back and forth and stuff. And then the guy that was doing the show had been catfished, and it was really hurtful to him. So he was a journalist, and he made this whole thing up, and he would find the people and go to their house with the guy that was catfished and confront them. Yeah, it's good TV, I thought. I don't know if it's still out there. But all that to say, like with anything, I think you have to be careful and use your common sense, even on Christian Mingle or eHarmony. eHarmony, I think you have to try harder because you're paying for the service, paying so much for the service. If you're going to catfish someone, or if you're going to try to do something or hurt someone, you're putting a lot of time and effort into that because of the way the communication's set up. It's very structured, very much controlled until you get to a certain point. And then when the algorithm decides that you're a match, then you can kind of click the box when you want to have open communication. But then you pay for the open communication if you're communicating through eHarmony, and they block any. I've seen people be pretty creative on eHarmony to give someone their email, because if you put your email in there, they block it. eHarmony will block it because they want you to pay to communicate with this person that you've built this relationship with online using their website, right? So people get kind of creative to put their email in there to have open communication where you don't have to continue to pay for it. Anyway, I don't know.
Christ is the truth said that I think long distance relationships just don't work. You know, I think probably differently. I think they can work, but I think you need to have a different level of understanding of how difficult it can be.
Yeah.
Like, well, I did that with your mum. We did that.
Sure.
And I do remember, like, her friend told her, well, you're going around the world, halfway around the world to meet this guy, and he might kill you and dump you in the back of his, in the boot of his car, trunk of his car, and bury you in the bush. Like,
right.
Well, yeah, right. It's anything possible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's possible.
So I think with anything, you've got a leap of faith. You've got to trust something. You've got to trust.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to, don't do it. But I do think it can work. I think it probably gets, even though she and I weren't together, the fact is that we're still extremely bonded.
Oh yeah.
And that becomes more and more difficult when you are bonded and you're not in a place where you're together and trying to see. The harder thing to do when you're bonded like that is you can't break it. That's what hurts you. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure, I do. Yeah.
It's extremely difficult to find equilibrium and still may have, because you're always going, if you're bonded, you're always going to have a relationship regardless of circumstances and location. You can't not, just because you can't avoid it. As soon as you connect, again, you're like, yeah, right, well, that's just like, well, you never were, you're not disconnected in the first place, so it's just like you're picking up where you left off.
Yeah.
It might be a year, 2 years, whatever, with any person.
Sure.
So I think it's difficult.
Yeah.
But that's once again, but I think it can work. I think you can you can be married and live on a distance relationship and be honourable, faithful, all those kinds of things if you want. I think you manage it. You just manage it within. Put it this way: if you really want it, you'll find a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
So.
I mean, I think you said a lot there, Glenn, and I think it can be hard, but if you're devoted to making it work, I think you can endure anything, even long distance. I mean, what difference does long distance make if you care about the person and you want to be with them? I mean, it can be more expensive for plane trips and bus trips or however you travel. I mean, in your situation, you and my mom were quite a ways away from each other. So, there's a certain expense to that. But you had talked a long time before you did the in-person thing. And, to me, it was the natural step. And she came to visit you and you came to visit here. And, I think it definitely can work. I think you made some good points. It just depends on how devoted you are to making it work. And then you mentioned couples being married. Sometimes you're already married. It's not a matter of meeting someone new, but you're separated because of a job or work, or you have people that travel a lot for their job and they're away from home. Like I've got a friend who was a truck driver, so he would have 2 weeks on the road and 2 weeks at home, something like that, and it works for them. I mean, I wouldn't do that because for me, I don't want to be away from my wife for 2 weeks at a time. I don't think she would want that either, but that's just me. There are people that it works for. So I think it can work. It just depends on how, like what Glenn said, depends on how much you want it to work. How willing are you to do what it takes to make it work? That's my opinion.
Yeah, of course, if you've got young children, you just can't waltz off and go and live in another country. There are limitations and I've had that limitation. That you can find someone online that lives in the next street, but that doesn't absolve you from your responsibilities to family.
No.
So, like I know when I met Sandra, it was a piece of cake. I only had to drive for 30 minutes to meet her. Well, that's way different from flying to the other side of the world.
Yeah. Well, that's another conversation too. It seemed like everybody I met online, they were from far away. I even had one in South Korea that I talked to for a while. And my dad found out about it, and he didn't like it. He thought I was living in a fantasy world that would ever work out. So some people are very negative about that sort of thing. I think the older generation, of course, Glenn's part of that generation too. He doesn't have a problem with it. So that should be an indication that not everybody from that generation has an issue with it. But the older folks, they didn't grow up with any of this stuff. I mean, it's kind of a mystery to them why anyone would date online. I mean, I've met various people in my own life that don't believe in it. Think it's not a good thing. But that hasn't kept me from doing it or trying it. So on that, I think that if it's something you want to try, I think there are ways to go about it where it could be successful for you. Just like Glenn said, you have to be careful. I mean, use your common sense if you're going to meet someone that you met online. I mean, I met Paul and Matthias online, and I went and stayed with them for a week in Florida, and I was very uncomfortable because Paula, she didn't have anything against me, but they have kids, and I didn't stay in the house. I stayed in this back house that they had, like a little guest house. But the kids were obviously very interested in me and who I am. And there's this new person and I'm friendly with children. I've got 3 nieces and a nephew, not overly friendly by any stretch, but I took an interest in them in that way. And they kept coming out to the guest house and visiting me. And I had been told, I had witnessed a conversation where she told Matthias, he gave me a key because they didn't have a bathroom they had a bathroom, but it wasn't working in the guest house. And I overheard a conversation where Paula was reacting to him giving me a key, and it was only given to me to come in and use the bathroom at night. And so the next day I went right to it and asked, I heard what you said. Are you uncomfortable with me being here? And she told me straight up. She says, we met you on the internet. I'm sure you're fine. It's nothing against you, but we don't know you. You could be a serial killer for all I know. And I left. I'm not gonna stay somewhere. I mean, I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I mean, she had a point. She doesn't know me. Now I know me. I know that I'm not a serial killer. I'm not going to hurt their kids or do anything to them or do anything to Paul and Matthias. But the minute I knew that she was that uncomfortable with it, I didn't feel right being there. So you have people that react differently to the same situation. There's nothing wrong with being careful, especially when you have kids. But me personally, if someone feels like that, I'm not going to hang around and make them feel more uncomfortable by being there. I'm not going to do that. So, um, oh, thanks, Truth. That's okay. Uh, I'm not hurt by it. I'm okay. uh,
Sorry,
I,
Crips, I missed that bit. I was just Sandra came in. Sorry to hear that. What was that? Sorry, that last bit you said, Crips, if you wouldn't mind.
well, I was just talking about when I went to visit Paul and Matthias in Florida. Do you remember when I did that?
Oh
Or
yeah, I remember that. It was a bit of a weird experience from memory.
Yeah, it was. It was, and it was mainly because of the way Paula reacted to me being there. I mean, there were some other things going on, but it was mainly that, and I understood. I mean, she was protecting her kids, and she didn't really know me. I mean, I felt like we had done broadcasts together, just like pretty often, and I had been on Matthias's program for a long time, and the three of us were on another program together. But that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I thought her point was valid, but I was just making the point that I'm not going to stay in a situation where I know someone's uncomfortable with me being there. That's all.
No way. I was also just looking at something Christ the Truth said, and that sort of hit me. I thought, my goodness, how difficult would that be? Like with a what do you call it, a distance relationship? He says Christian dating, I guess, is like courting, no physical intimacy, but just finding the right one to marry. I just can't see how that works long distance. When you get together, I mean, what do you think's going to happen? Like it's out of my reference frame to think you could, say, talk to someone for a year and be spiritually, emotionally invested, to think that when you get together that you're not going to just make music automatically. It just wouldn't even be a question. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, because you don't have the saddles on you of a Christian worldview. So
Correct, but I'm thinking, how difficult would that be to do that, like with someone? I can use your mum as an example.
sure.
As I mean, you're so bonded. Then you're going to say, "Oh, we can't touch each other." What? How's that going to work?
Yeah.
Fair. That's just ludicrous. See,
Yeah.
I just don't know how you could do it long distance wise, because
Yeah.
you haven't really had that opportunity to sit there and connect in space over time like you can do in a traditional situation, and you can put all your ideas on the table. But I don't think any ideas put on the table count for zip when you get together. Forget that. Shaking my head in sort of disbelief. I don't think I'd like that very much. Maybe there's a lot of advantages to not being a Christian.
Well, yes, actually speaking, I'm sure there is.
So,
I mean, whether it's right or wrong, within Christianity, obviously you're aware that there are certain rules
of
and
course, and I
regulations.
respect that. For people can do what they like. I'm just saying, from even connecting with other Christians, that just doesn't happen. I never found that to be a barrier. Just didn't seem to matter.
Hmm.
That's just life, I thought. It is what it is. Avoid lust of the flesh, or bugger off. I know, it's quite funny actually, isn't it? But you get this chemistry with someone, and then they say, "Well, don't stop there."
Yeah. Well, they do it. They bend over backwards, and it's because of the way it's taught. And if you look back far enough, you can see the progression. Like back in the 30s and 40s. I mean, obviously things still happened, right? Even with the mores and rules within Christianity, people still came together and did stuff, but it was way more frowned upon back then. Um, And then if someone got pregnant, rather than just, help the parents helping them deal with the decision they made, and that a child came out of it, they'd send them off somewhere. Not everyone, but a lot of them would send the child off somewhere because they were concerned about what everyone else thought. So it was way, way more. I mean, stereotypically, it was way more frowned upon back then. But it still is with purity culture and within Christianity, the idea of not being physical until married. So there's that, and it's a constant battle. And I have been on the inside of that, waiting until you're married to have sex and things like that. And I've done it both ways. And then after you're married and you have sex all the time, and you just start to look back at how ridiculous some of it seems. I mean, I think there are good reasons to be careful, especially for younger people. If you're not ready to pay the consequences of the decision, which means having a child when you're not ready for it, then you should be very careful, because that is a real possibility, even with protection and all of that. But obviously, if you're not coming from within the Christian worldview, you're not going to have the same attitudes about sex as would someone that grew up in the church. It's just, I mean, it's easy to recognize that it's going to be different. But on top of that, you have the purity culture, which I feel has been damaging. And we've talked a little bit about that, I think. But it's this idea of you need to be pure for the person you marry. It gets a little ridiculous sometimes. Like, we're expected to have the attitude of if you're dating a woman, it's Christ's daughter. And if you're not intending on marrying them, you don't want to spoil the package for their future husband. That kind of thing. Some of it's just mind-numbingly ridiculous. I think a lot of it for me is just common sense. You'd be careful. So just
I
be
think
careful.
Celine made an interesting point. I'm not sure I agree with it. I think about it. I think she said, I think you should see if there's chemistry through attraction. I think you should see if there's chemistry through attraction. It's a must in a relationship, not just values. It is a combination of attraction and values. Now, I'm going to disagree with Celine here. But I can only speak for one person, and that's myself.
Can you read it again?
I think you should see if there's chemistry through attraction. It's a must in a relationship, not just values. It's a combination of attraction and values.
Okay.
I'm going to say I disagree with Celine.
Oh, please.
From personally.
Sure.
I think the attraction that comes from the spiritual and the emotional connection you form, that, to my mind, automatically makes a person attractive in a physical sense. Because you've got everything that you associate with at such a high level. I just think the physical is automatic. And I've never been in a situation, and I've been in a few, where I've had that other part first without physical. Then when you get together, the attraction's automatic. You don't have to say, am I attracted to this person? You just are.
Right.
You're attracted to that person because of what they are in areas other than physical.
Right.
So I'm taking. I don't know what you guys think, but I think for me that's the least of my concerns. I just think that. Yeah,
I think it's a great topic, and I would like to hear from Marisa too. Who's been fairly quiet. I understand she's had a tiring week as well, so maybe that's best for her. But I don't want to leave her out. So, Marisa, if you want to comment on this, please do. But you certainly don't have to. But on this attraction thing, I am very aware. Jen and I talked about this when the idea of chemistry and the idea of chemicals. The chemical thing does exist. I mean, I'm not denying that you can have a physical attraction to someone, regardless of what else is going on. Uh, it is something they've studied it. Science has looked at the kind of chemicals, endorphins, and pheromones, and all of that happen when you meet someone for the first time. If there's a physical connection, a physical attraction, and that usually fades over time. So that does exist, and then you have the marriage of values and personality and clicking with the person that don't necessarily have anything to do with chemicals, but it's still a different type of attraction. And to me, that type of attraction, I think, Glenn, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's more what you're talking about. And I think that is vastly more important than a chemical connection or a physical attraction. Not saying there's no value in a physical attraction. I have noticed that does fade for a lot of people. Maybe not for everyone. I can't prove it does for everyone. But this is when Jen and I met. I'll just say this and then I'll shut up. But when we met, she and I talked about the fact that when you meet someone new, there's this chemical dump, and we'd even make little funny comments. And I thought that was the chemicals talking. We'd say something, or I'd say something. I'd say, "Oh, that was the chemicals." It was just a joke. It was a running joke between us, especially at the beginning. Um, and I made the point, and I had a theory that I believe that if you were authentic with a person and open and honest and as much as you possibly could be, both of you were like that with each other, the chemical dump would fade, but the attraction would grow. And that ended up being true. I'm way more attracted to my wife than I was when we first met. Now, we had the chemicals to deal with, which I think if you're not careful, makes you stupid almost. I mean, it's if you just let the chemicals make decisions, that's what's I think is the most difficult. Um, so I don't know if any of that made sense. It made sense in my head. So what I'm saying is that the chemicals do exist, and Celine is saying if there's chemistry, so that's what I believe that's what she's referring to, the chemicals that happen between the two people. She's saying that's a must in relationships, not just values. So I partially agree with what Celine's saying, but I more agree with Glenn that it's way more than that. I don't think Celine's wrong. It is attraction and it is values. It's everything. For me, it's everything that a person offers, and it's everything I offer. I just think that people make decisions while they're in the chemical dump, and that may not be the best thing to do. It's way better to get to know someone first and know what their personality is like and values. Understand the chemicals are there, but I mean I've seen it happen so many times that people get married early on when they still have the chemicals, and then they start a life together, and then when the chemicals die off, they're like, "Oh, I'm not in love with you anymore," and that's just ridiculous. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, I suppose. Marisa, what do you think about this?
I'm just letting you guys talk. I'm not married. I'm not in proximity of anybody that I'm dating or anything like that. So I'm just letting you guys conversate. So
So you
go
don't
right
have
ahead.
you don't have an
I'm just not wanting to go there tonight. No, thank you.
okay.
I just find it. I'll just say I find it. I would find it extremely difficult to be attracted to an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful woman if she wasn't aligned with my value system
Right.
and my other, parts of integrity and all of those values. I just can't find it in me. Why would you be attracted to someone who's not on a page, like someone who would say go and hit their cat over the head with a lump of timber, or be hurtful or do things to people? How do you? It doesn't matter what she looks like. You would.
Right.
Why would you want to go near her? I
Well, I
just can't
wouldn't.
see it. Where do you could? I don't see how you could even have chemistry with that person.
Right.
Chemistry, to my mind, is a result of what the person deep down has to offer, and with the person they are. You know, and and I know you're going to hear, we go to a bar, you see someone hot, you go home. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more your a longer term sort of scenario.
Hmm.
Why would you want to marry someone just because you think they're hot? You'd be bonkers.
Oh yeah, and Celine, I understand what you're saying about wanting to be attracted to someone, but your physical attractiveness fades. It just does. I mean, you see it all the time. You know, the prom queen who's beautiful when she's 17, 18, 19, maybe even into their 30s, some longer than that. But what happens when their looks fade with age? Now, I'm not saying that matters to me. I I think Jen is beautiful, and I know that she's going to get older. I'm going to get older. We're both going to get older. It's inevitable. There's nothing I can do to stop it. But I'm going to love her. I know this uh, more and more because that's what I'm experiencing. And when she gets old, she gets old. You know, her looks are gonna. I'm not saying that they're gonna fade. I'm just saying in general, she's not gonna look the same as she did when she was 17 years old, and neither am I. I actually like the way I look now more than I did when I was 17. I feel like when I look at pictures of myself back then, I was still a mixture between a boy and a man. I had a boyish face, and I didn't like that. I wanted to look more like a man, and now with age, I think I've got that. That's neither here nor there. But your looks don't hang around forever. And Celine, this isn't just for you; it's for everyone. Surely you've got to know that. But making that point, I understand what you're saying about not being attracted to someone. I'm not saying it's not important, but I agree with Glenn on this one. There's a lot more to a relationship than just whether you're quote unquote physically attracted to someone. But I want to get back to something you said, Glenn, because weren't correct me if I'm wrong. I firmly remember that you were challenging me with the same thing that you're saying that like you were asking me, you're saying that you wouldn't be able to be with someone where your values don't align, but you were asking me the question, would I do that? Would I be able to be with someone that didn't share my same beliefs? Are you looking at that as a different thing?
I think they're all tied up together. Like I'll give you this one is for Celine, because I think that attraction can be without chemicals. And I can relate to this very personally. When I met Sandra, we'd only done like 2 or 3 emails each, and said, okay, well, obviously we need to get together, which we did, etc., etc. Now I had none of those chemicals at all, and I'm pretty sure neither did she. In the traditional sense, where you get the heart flutters, there was none of that. It was very holistic, chemist, but very strong, but not the same. Nothing like anything I'd ever experienced before. It's like a chemistry of resignation, if you want to call it like that. It's very powerful, but it's quite different. Now, the thing is, that chemistry is still the same 25 years later, which, to my mind, it's never worn off.
Right.
But I obviously, when you read all the therapy books, and I'll say, oh yeah, like all that, the chemicals and that, they'll wear off in a year or 2 years, but they will wear off. So I think it's different for everybody. But if all you're relying on is chemicals as attraction, as the basis as a foundation for a longer term partnership, I think you pissing in the wind. It's going to come back and wet you.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's kind of the point I was making. So we're in agreement on that. Yeah. The attraction, the physical attractiveness doesn't last, and neither do the chemicals.
So when it wears off, I was just going to say, Chris,
Yeah.
you very quickly come to what is the real foundation of the relationship that remains after you can still be physically attracted, but it's not going to be the same. It's
Right.
going to be different. But what have you got underpinning that relationship is what's going to count towards
Yes.
the longevity of it. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable because it won't fulfill you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100% with that. And I have felt it both ways. So my first marriage, I'm not saying there were no chemicals, but I was not as physically attracted to her. But that marriage was more. I felt like I was getting older and I was going to miss my opportunity. We met on eHarmony. On paper, it all worked out, and this isn't going to be about me trashing my ex-wife or anything, not by any stretch. I'm just sharing that I didn't have as many chemicals at the time, but also the more the relationship went on, I realized that our values were not aligned, and that was something on paper that looked like they did, but then when you get into it, you realize that no, it was just on paper. It was the way you answer certain questions that there was a lot of agreement on. And then you get into it and realize that I'm not saying she lied. I lied about smoking. I smoked at the time cigarettes, and it wasn't like a pack a day habit or anything, but it was something I did, especially on the weekends because I was still drinking as well. So when I would drink, I would smoke, and so in the questionnaire on eHarmony, I had said that I'd clicked the box non-smoker, and I rationalized in my own mind that I wasn't really technically. I was a weekend smoker, so that's not a smoker, really. You know, I which was wrong. It wasn't being completely authentic. I admit that, but there were some things that she wasn't completely authentic either. But the point is, I wasn't as physically attracted to her. There were other things that were reasons for me of why I got into that, and it didn't work out. So I brought that up to say that my relationship with Jen to me was the whole package. I was obviously she's a beautiful woman. Was physically attracted to her, but there was more going on other than that. We did share the same values. We did share a lot of the same beliefs. Not 100%, but we did match up in more ways than any other person I've ever dated, and that's why it lasts. And I enjoy waking up every day and knowing that I'm going to get closer to this person. It's not stagnant. It's not static. It continues, and I just can't imagine being in a relationship with someone where it's not like that. But you see it every day. You see marriages that fail. One or both people, quote unquote, fall out of love with one another. You know, don't ask me how that works. I don't. I mean, I hear the excuses, and a lot of that is because the chemicals go away. So you say you're not the man I married. You're not the woman I married. Well, you shouldn't be. In my opinion, you should be changing and growing every day. But I'm sure that's not realistic for some people. It is for me.
I think truth is huge here because I think that if you're just hiding your truth because you're sort of reluctant to think or to say something because of what you think the other person's going to, how they're going to react, I think that is a stepping stone to disaster. Because
I agree.
It's going to bring you down. So you've got to be brutal with yourself, and I've had to do this with myself. I know that I'm no hero. I've had, I'd be, and I can sort of see it. I'd be thinking of saying, well, now what should I say here? And I think, well, if I say that, it's going to go down better. And then I say, don't be an idiot, just cough it up. You just do not do it because it's not it will come back. It's karma. It will get you.
Yeah.
And it does get people, I think. So you just got to lay it out, and that's where there is courage and all that involved. And I think through courage does perpetuate attraction because someone who is being truthful with you all the way down the line.
Yeah.
You respect them, and that is an attractive force. Respect is huge, I think.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, we could talk an hour about that, I'm sure. But yeah, so that experience I talked about with my first marriage, because I went through that, I was bound and determined. I was probably too honest with Jen about myself, but that's why it worked, in my opinion. Like even the lie that I told about smoking, that came back to haunt me later because when we spent time together, on weekends when we go out, and I would smoke, and she rightly so brought it up to me and said, you clicked on eHarmony that you weren't a smoker, and I'm sure my face got red, and I had to admit to her that I had lied about that. So when Jen and I met, I told the complete, and I mean it when I say this, I was completely honest about every possible thing that you could imagine being honest about. I told her things from my past, the mistakes that I'd made, times that I'd, gotten in trouble. Of course, there was honesty about my financial situation. I didn't have anything to offer financially. In fact, I was pretty much starting over from square one. No savings, no stocks and bonds, no nothing. I mean, I really honestly had nothing to offer. I had to be honest about that. She had to know what she was getting into if she made the choice to walk this out with me. So, but that was not the case the first time. And what Glenn said, I agree with 100%. If you don't have the honesty in the beginning, it's dead before it goes anywhere, in my opinion. Want to say hello to Wisconsin Greg. It's okay that you're late. We're glad that you came. Also, Bobby Meyer. Didn't say hello to them. And that we knew was in here already. Let me make sure I didn't forget anyone else. Celine, John Dons. Of course, Truth. And the other one I forgot to say hello to, I didn't forget. We were in the middle of talking, and Debbie popped in. So hello to our friend Debbie as well. I hope I didn't forget anybody. I think I mentioned everyone that's here. So thank you guys for being kind of winging it tonight. So still, if you guys have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please pop it in the chat. We'll be more than happy to discuss it. Yeah. So, Celine, what happened to, I'm curious what happened. The guy that you're talking about that you weren't attracted to, is that the latest person that you were dating? Or are you still together with that person? Because I thought that seemed to be working out real well. So is that what you're referring to, or is that someone else? Just curious.
I was just going to say, married too young. I think it's not about too young. I think it's more a question of maturity of the people involved. You can be a lot more mature at 20 than some people are at 30. So, I think.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you can stereotype an age as too young, personally.
Yeah, age doesn't guarantee maturity. I mean, it seems like it should. There's a correlation between wisdom and age. But I've met 60, 70-year-old people that were very immature. And I've met 20-year-olds that were more mature. Of course, they say they have an old soul, which whether you believe in that or not, there seem to be some people that just seem to be way more mature than others. That's pretty standard. Well, Celine, I just went over to Facebook, and I do see your cute little dog pic. I can't believe you're doing that to the poor dog with a hat, but it's your dog, it's not mine, so you can do whatever you want. But I'm just joking. I don't feel like dogs want to wear clothes or hats, but Jen and I watch Frasier. Of course, it hasn't. Well, they came back on the air, and we tried to watch that. It just wasn't the same, so we're not watching that. But the old reruns of Frasier, and of course, they have that amazing dog Eddie. That the dog that played Eddie is passed on a long time ago now, but very smart dog. And Martin, the dog's owner, was always, especially around Christmas, putting clothes, Christmas stuff, and hats and stuff on the dog, and they just kind of made a joke about that. We just watched that episode recently, so that's why I mentioned the hat. Hello to Early Grace, who popped in the chat. Good evening, everyone. I'm an immature 55-year-old. LOL. Well, I think if you say that, it's probably not true. I don't know that people would admit that they're immature, or at least most people wouldn't. So either way, welcome. We're glad that you're here.
Imagine being a party animal at 55. I would have been dead.
Oh, yeah.
Not a chance.
Honestly, I'm really glad that I did that earlier on, and it's out of my system, because at now I wouldn't be able to live that sort of lifestyle at all. I just wouldn't. Um, Being out till 2 in the morning when the bars close, and then being awake at home for a while, and going to bed really early in the morning, and then uh it's just a lot. Especially, I used to do it when I had to work the next day. I'd go out and be out late, and then go home and get a couple hours sleep and get up and go to work. It's just not for me personally. Maybe there are people out there that enjoy that, but for me, it's not my favorite. So I'm happy with the life that I live, and I'm happy that I don't need to go out all the time in order to have fun or enjoy myself. Um, just not something I'm interested in. But to each their own, as they say. Um, all right. So, does anyone have any topics you'd like to discuss? You guys are fairly active in the chat, so I would assume that somebody would have something they want to talk about. Marisa, do you have anything you'd like to discuss that's more in your wheelhouse?
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just sitting here chilling, listening.
Oh, I know you're not. I know you're not complaining. I just didn't want to leave you out. Yeah, truth. Marisa's here. She didn't feel like talking about the last topic because she's not dating anyone. So I
We
understand.
aren't either.
Right.
We're dating our wives.
Right. Yeah.
I laughed. Yeah. My
How-
wife said, we're going to get the COVID booster. I think it's a good time, like, for you to get me coffee. I said, all right. Then we get Then she said, oh, maybe we can go to the charity shop and get this. I said, why don't you just tell me what you want up front rather than drip feeding me? That isn't. And I say something four-lettered to her, and she said, and then she promptly does it again in 5 minutes' time. So that's how it works. Everybody laughs.
How long have you been? How long have you
Sorry?
been married? 18 years.
No, 25 this year.
25.
Man,
Well, great.
yeah.
Seems to be going strong.
It's gone. Well, it's obviously with a large degree of adversity attached, but
Oh yeah,
it's
sure.
still
Sure.
going as strong as it was from day one. But that's when you make a choice based on integrity and values and stuff like that. You've got a lot to work with, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why they last.
Sure. So Earl Lee Grace brought up a topic. How does one reconcile faith and health insurance? Earl, I feel like I understand what you mean. So I
don't.
Okay, so I'm gonna explain what I think he means, and then Earl, your job will be to tell me if I have it right or wrong. So, how does one reconcile faith and health insurance? So, I'll tell you a story to give you an idea. I had a cousin, and this is before I was born, but you hear stories, and the story was told. And this cousin of mine had diabetes, and he was part of Christian Science. For those of you that don't know, it is a religion. It's an offshoot of Christianity, and they don't. It's kind of a strict, from what I understand. I don't know super lot about it, not as much as I know about some of the other denominations out there. All I know is that they did not believe in getting medical care. Okay. So he had diabetes, and he'd gotten into his head one day that God healed him of his diabetes. And so he quit taking his insulin and summarily died. Okay. So now the people that were around him at the time said that he had faith. He had faith that God had healed him. But yet the reality is that he didn't take his insulin. And he died from a result of his diabetic condition. So for me, when you brought that topic up, you're saying, how do you have faith and also health insurance? And to me, it's a matter of common sense. Um, I have faith that when I drive my car, that there's a certain level of protection. If it's not my time to die, I'm not going to get in a car accident and die. But I also am a realist, and I understand that car accidents are very common, and I put my seatbelt on. Now, I could easily just say, well, I have faith, and I could decide not to wear my seatbelt. And then if I get in a car accident, I have a greater chance of being thrown free of the car or dying or hitting the steering wheel with my head, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, how I reconcile it, we have health insurance through my job, and it's really a precaution. With car insurance, you have to have it. I mean, there are plenty of people that don't, but you're supposed to have car insurance. It's a rule, like it's a law. So that's why I have it. Now, health insurance is a little bit different for me. Sometimes I've had it and I've been fine. Other times I've had it. So for me, it's not a given necessarily, but as I get older, I imagine that as my body starts to get older, I'm going to have more health problems. And that's just being a realist, that these things do happen. And I don't think it's a problem at all for me that I have health insurance in case something were to happen. Now, I'll be completely honest. If I wasn't married to Jen, if I didn't have anyone else to be concerned about, I would be fine not having health insurance. In the past when I didn't have it and something would come up, I would just pay out of pocket. And yeah, certain things that could happen to you are very expensive and you go into debt and all that. But to me, that's just the way it is. But I don't lose any sleep about having health insurance as if as if the message is I don't have faith. I think this ties into a lot of things about where your faith can walk hand in hand with doing everything we can as a person to protect ourselves in whatever way we can. Like I can have faith that I'm not going to get mugged and killed if I go on the wrong side of town late at night, but I'm not going to choose to do that. I'm not going to put God to the test, so to speak, by being stupid. So that's my answer to that. What do you think, Glenn? Earl hasn't said that I'm off. He says, does one rely on the Lord to keep them healthy, but still hedge that faith by buying insurance? So I think I have you right, Earl. Truth says, I live in a place with free health care, but it's not entirely free. Medications aren't free. Neither is dental care, for example. Okay. I'm assuming that's
answer?
Canada.
Yeah, well, we have health insurance, but I've cut it right back because everything here is free for people like ourselves. So because of our age, we get pension concession cards, so dentistry, anything you get that's not private is free. So, but just in case there was like elective surgery, like you needed a hip, well, not that we do, but if you needed like a hip replacement and you're in the public system, you can be there for a year. But if you've got private insurance, you can get it in a month or maybe, you know what I mean. So we do have that basic cover of private, but I don't know how you relate it to Christian stuff at all. It's out of my frame of reference. I just think be sensible about your health. No,
Yeah, right.
you know,
So,
go on. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I was just going to say that what I said is what I'm sticking to. I use that example because I think it was foolish for if you have diabetes. I mean, it's great to have faith. God could heal you. I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. But I've also been around long enough to see that a lot of times he doesn't heal people. Not that he can't or not that he doesn't, but a lot of people my dad has diabetes. Actually, it runs in my family. So I have to be careful that I don't have it. My dad got it in his mid 30s and had it ever since. So I'm obviously way past that. And thus far, I don't have it, but I could get it. My grandpa, my dad's dad, he didn't have it until he got older. So he was in his 70s when he got the late onset diabetes. And so he had to take insulin and all of that and test himself and be careful about what he ate and all that stuff for the remainder of his life. So that very well could happen to me. I don't feel like I'm not trusting God if I prepare for possibilities by having health insurance. I don't think that those two are have to be separate things. I feel like the examples I used were pretty good. Um, the when you drive a car, being careful, not just driving foolishly and expecting that God's going to protect you from getting in an accident. Wearing your seatbelt, um, and the example of I'm not going to go to the bad side of town at 2 a.m. and expect that God's going to protect me from being mugged. You just don't put yourself in situations. Uh, I think that should be just common sense. It's a good question, Earl.
Yeah, common sense is the key, isn't it? I mean, if there's something that you know that's safe and it's been keeping people alive for generations,
Yeah,
it's a big leap of faith to just say, well, I'll be right. I'll just go off the meds and God
yeah,
will help me. I mean, sure, I wouldn't be that courageous.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. Earl says, good points. Yes, do all you can and rely on God. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. You can be a believer and still do everything that you can do within your power, and that's this is a lesson Jen and I learned. There's this idea within Christianity of trusting God. That we need to trust God and not run ahead of Him, so to speak. And we did that with jobs for a while. When we first moved in together, I had money from selling the townhouse, and so for the first year, things were pretty easy, and it was wonderful because I didn't have to worry about bills. I was able to pay everything, and also that correlated with COVID, so people weren't allowed to work unless you had a work from home job. And we were taken care of, but because we both weren't working. Now Jen was working, but I didn't have a job for a while. I had the drafting, but at that time, and still to this day, it doesn't. It's great paying. It's really really great paying, and I guarantee you, if there was enough work to keep us going, I would be happy just doing that, and I would buy health insurance just as a private citizen instead of getting it from a corporation. That'd be fine with me. Um, but I was quote unquote trusting God to help us get by. And it to me, it just became stupid in my own mind. It just was like, wait, what am I doing? I'm not working, and I expect that God's just gonna provide for me. And if you're a person that does that, I understand. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just talking about the way I felt. It just felt ridiculous to me. Um, so what I learned in that process was exactly the point I made. Do everything that you can do and trust God for the rest. As a believer, that seems right to me. But there are people out there that just go to the other end of the spectrum, and they quote unquote trust God for everything, like my dear cousin. And he paid quite a hefty price for that. And it's a lesson. I don't want to do that. I want to do everything within my own power, and then trust God for the things that I can't take care of. And I think that's the best way to do it. Marisa, this is something you can weigh on. What do you think of this idea of insurance? Is having health insurance not trusting God? What do you say?
I really don't have much to say about health insurance. I have it for my daughter because you never know what might happen. Um, I I just have what I have because in case I don't really have a lot of thought about it. I I'm off of big pharma, so I don't need it for medications anymore that I know of. Um, I feel a lot better. Um,
Okay.
Yeah,
But
I'm just what?
do you think it's a lack of faith if you have health insurance, though? I think that's what Earl's getting at, or he's asking. He's not saying that he believes that. He's just asking. As a believer, is it
Oh,
wrong? Is it wrong, morally wrong to have? Does it mean that you're not trusting God if you have health insurance?
no, I don't believe that. No, I
Right,
don't
right,
believe that.
right, right. Thanks, Marisa. Truth says it's interesting. I think there's a big correlation between having medicine available in the age of grace, like the Old Testament, when they weren't under grace. It was also very tough for them when they got. On the flip side, though, when they got sick due to lack of medicine, on the flip side, though, they had less technology that messed with people's minds, and the spiritual veil was thinner in a way. People actually spoke with God directly back then, whereas now it's more by faith when we communicate with God. I mean, you're not wrong. Also, that was like you say, that's a very different time. They didn't have hospitals in the Sinai Desert. They didn't have that sort of thing. So it's just a different time, and we've experienced that here, uh, even in more recent times. I mean, I think here in the West, at least, hospitals are readily available and emergency rooms, and there's plenty of medicine available if you want it. So if something happens, you're not left out in the middle of nowhere. You can get treatment. Break an arm, you can go to an emergency room or hospital and get it set. Where back then, I mean, you were just pretty much on your own. If you broke something, I'm sure they had ways to reset it and all of that. I'm not saying that, but yeah, it's just a different time. I agree. Truth, for sure. Glenn says all about finding a balance, in my opinion. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Um, all right. Well, um, you guys want to quit early tonight?
Up to you, Crips.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
Yep, it's up to you.
Well, just we don't have Jen, and I know Maurice's tired and stuff, and uh, just feels like we're just trying to pull topics out of the air. What we can do is talk about what we may be talking about next week. Um, there is another article that we ran across. It is about joy. Jesus first, others second, you last. And it's interesting to me that I didn't really think that was out there for everyone else too, but they had that in my curriculum at the Christian school that I went. I remember the picture. It was like a cornucopia. Everyone knows what that is. A bunch of fruits and stuff in there, and it said to the side, it had J period O period Y period, and then below that it said Jesus first, others second, you last. And we've talked a lot on this broadcast. We've tried to make the point that the law that Jesus said that wrapped up all the laws and prophets is love God with everything and love your neighbor as yourself. And I've made the point more than once that to me that implies that it's important that we do love ourselves. And I'm fighting upstream against the way we're taught that we're all worthless sinners. Our heart is deceitful and all of that. And within Christianity, that's kind of pushed, not kind of, it is pushed. And we have here on TSL, we've noticed that there are a lot of professing Christians that seem in some ways to be miserable. Not everyone. And we've done a lot of broadcasts on that. So this ties into that for me. The idea of putting others first. On one hand, that kind of lines up with the way we're brought up. That we shouldn't put ourselves before others. But then the other part of that is does that mean that we don't take care of our own needs? There's a difference between being self-absorbed and caring for self. So anyway, I think it's a good article, and we passed it around a little bit, or Glenn passed it around to some folks at the church, and they have some things to say. Not going to talk out of turn or share anything without their permission, of course, but I'll just say that there may be a lot of things to draw on for that. So there's that topic, and there's another topic that Jen brought up about, we mentioned at the top of the broadcast about sex within Christianity, and that ties into marriage and how the woman's needs are oftentimes not met, where the man is the most important in the relationship. So those are two separate subjects that tie in together under the topic of sex. So we will talk about which one we want to do first, and I promise we'll be more prepared for next week. For anyone that's interested, the Detroit Lions did not win, so we took last week off so I could watch that game. It literally was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. A lot of people say, well, they've got a good team. They just didn't make it this year. They'll be back, and I hope they are. I do. But I have not been interested in football for a very long time. I do the fantasy football because I'm in it with my brother-in-law, and I've made friends over the past 20 years doing that, and I'll probably continue to do it. So I'm not going to say I have no interest, but when they made it, it tied into my grandfather, my dad's dad, who I used to sit and watch Lions and games and Tigers games, baseball. And it just made me think of him, and I miss him every day. He was a wonderful man. I look forward to seeing him again. And it made me think of him, and growing up liking the Lions, and they're always horrible, pretty much. So I was hoping that they would win and make it to the Super Bowl, but that didn't happen. So that was last week. And then this week, we had that other topic that we were wanting to discuss. It just kind of fell through the cracks here, so I apologize for that. But truth is always so, Christ is the truth is always so complimentary. He said, great show tonight. Thank you for that, brother. I appreciate that. Appreciate you always being here and being supportive. And also appreciate everyone's comments tonight. And thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to be here. We always are thankful for that. So we will announce what the topic is going to be next week, but we hope everyone can come and weigh in on either, there might be a different topic altogether, but those are the two that we're thinking about doing, and we'll see what fits in best for next week. So I'll say goodnight to everyone, and I'm going to go check on Jen and see how she's doing. But thanks again for being here. Hope everyone has a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Glenn, do you have any closing comments, or do you want to say goodbye to the peoples?
No, I shall say goodnight and let you know that I pretty much watched the whole game last week.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I put myself out. I bit my tongue. I crossed my fingers.
Oh.
Banged my head on the wall and thought, I'm going to look at this, because then I can give Cripps an objective feedback. And I thought his team played really well, but they gave so much in the first half, it was pretty obvious they might just drop away when it came to the crunch, and that's unfortunately what happened. But I've seen it so many times, but they did themselves proud.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like they let off the gas. They were doing really well in the first half, and I even turned to Jen at one point. I was a little dubious just because I've had a lot of disappointment with them. I mean, but they've never gotten this far. They do have a good team. Of course, after it was over, I watched several videos from other fans, and there's some really good points made. They have some weaknesses. They have a very young team, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. You have strength and power, but they don't have any older veterans who have been to championship games. I think they have one or two. I think the quarterback went to a Super Bowl, but he's still young. I'm talking about seasoned veterans. So we'll see what they do to get better prepared. Hopefully they'll make a run for it again next year. And now that they've had the experience of actually making it to two championship games or two playoff games rather. Um, they may have a chance again. I'm not holding my breath or anything, but we'll see what happens. But thank you, Glenn. I'm impressed that you actually bothered to do that. I was telling Jen how my mom later in life, I went through a lot of grief being a football fan. I think I've told you the story about the one Thanksgiving when Shannon first got married, and we went over there to her house for dinner, and the football game was on Thanksgiving, and it was a tradition for me. And coincidentally, the Lions always play on Thanksgiving. The Lions and the Cowboys always play on things, not each other all the time. I mean, there's other teams too that play, but historically, they always play. And that day, it was so bad they had this TV cabinet, and I was balking about when dinner was scheduled because I wanted to have the game on, even without the sound, just have the game on. And Shannon didn't want that, so we compromised, and she closed half of the TV cabinet so I could see half of the TV. It was just ridiculous. But all that to say that later in life, my mom started taking interest in football, and I know for sure that she was doing that to put herself in a place where she's trying to understand why I loved it so much. And I'll never forget that. It was so meaningful to me that she would do that. And she became a football fan. There's even a picture I have, the DAP. So it was the Carolina Panthers, our local team. And they have this thing where you hold your arm out in front of you and kind of nod your head. It's just this silly thing. But I had her do it one time, and I snapped a picture of it, and I still have it. But so that's what it made me think of, Glenn. That you actually, well, I'm not saying that was the reason why you did it, but that's what it made me think of. That taking interest in what other people like, I would take an interest in horse racing, especially if I came to visit. I've watched a few horse racing stuff, and I have some knowledge of what that is about and what that entails, and Triple Crown and all that. But yeah, it's not something I'm super interested in. But I think when people are friends and you can take an interest in something, even if you don't have an interest, you can do that to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So I really appreciate it. All right. Marisa, could you, if you have any closing comments, please make them. And if you could say goodbye to the people for us.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. And we missed our Jen tonight. Please keep her lifted up in prayer. And God willing, we'll have Jen back with us next Sunday. And thanks everybody who's been uplifting me and sending me kind words and keeping me in prayer. I'm feeling better bit by bit. I think it's been about a week since I've smoked any tobacco either.
Oh, wow.
So that's a step in the right direction.
Wow.
Yeah, I just didn't. I don't want it. I tried to have one of Diana's dad's cigarettes a few days ago, and just didn't want it. No,
Wow.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, praise the Lord. I thank God for that. All right,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody. Again, if you have any suggestions for things to talk about here, you can reach out to any of us. I put my email in the chat, and I also put it out there if anybody has prayer requests. My email's there. Feel free to let us know. Thank you, everybody. God willing, we'll see you next Sunday, right here on True Story Live for another great discussion. Good night, and God bless.